Ninjago's 10th season, entitled March of the Oni, served as the grand conclusion to the Oni Trilogy era of Ninjago, the era that many fans of the show consider to be its absolute peak. But that being said, just because many fans consider the trilogy to be peak doesn't mean they consider it to be perfect, as many fans would agree that the ending of the Oni Trilogy, March of the Oni's final few episodes, was largely pretty fumbled. Not fumbled to the extent of seasons like Crystallized, it still at least came out okay, but kind of disappointing for a lot of people nonetheless. To an extent, I can get some of the complaints. I can understand thinking Garmadon's Oni form design pre-Crystallized was incredibly goofy. I can understand why people who wanted even more lore on the Oni would be disappointed, but I feel as if, as an emotionally grounded and character-driven conclusion to the Oni trilogy and first 10 seasons of Ninjago, it does a really good job at what it sets out to do. In this sea of muddled and conflicting opinions from different Ninjago fans, one opinion that's almost completely always agreed upon is that this was a wasted opportunity. Most people can agree that the actual scene where Cole falls is incredibly well made and executed. A particularly good choice is the complete lack of any kind of vocals in the scene. It really adds to it and lets the visuals speak for themselves. But the big problem is that completely undercuts this incredibly emotional scene is that Cole's completely fine. Don't worry guys, there's nothing to worry about. The criticisms people have of this usually boil down to 2 points. 1, fake out deaths are usually never satisfying. They usually feel like a cheap and hollow way to generate emotion where there is none and then quickly wipe away the consequences so you don't have to deal with them. You know, rather than just telling an actual story that doesn't involve characters dying or committing to a character death. 2, this little mini story arc of Cole falling off of the bounty, trying to trudge his way through the Oni infested city, and then return to the monastery, as cool and fun as it is, kind of does absolutely nothing for his character development wise. Which is a shame. If you aren't going to kill off Cole and fulfill the prophecy we saw in season 5, you could at least use this chance to give us some more insight into the character of Cole before the end of the trilogy. Being annoyed that this arc didn't do anything for the character of Cole himself? Sure, that's a valid opinion. It's not one I agree with personally because that isn't the end of the world for me, especially with what I'm about to mention, but I can understand why this would turn people off. However, the wording of this particular criticism that I just can't get behind is the idea that this death contributed nothing to the story. Because while it doesn't contribute to Cole's character, it contributes to the characters of Lloyd and Garmadon hugely. So, in order to demonstrate what I mean, let's give a quick recap of the story so far. In response to the sudden and all-consuming Oni invasion of Ninjago, Lloyd goes to his father Garmadon in prison for help. Garmadon and Lloyd do not have a good history, as established by the first 2 parts of the trilogy, and Lloyd doesn't trust his father anymore. After the whole incident where Garmadon was resurrected as an uncaring monster and then absolutely leveled Ninjago City, it's pretty fair to say that Lloyd and Garmadon have some pretty bad issues. Garmadon, on the other hand, because of his resurrection and time with Harumi, has an incredibly short-minded and just bad worldview. He cares exclusively about the primal idea of survival and nothing else. Survival first, emotions come never. This contrasts directly with Lloyd, with Garmadon consistently telling Lloyd to throw his sentiments and feelings out of the window, which always leads to tension between the two. This duality of sentimentality versus survival, combined with the fact that Lloyd already has bad blood with his father because of the events of season 9 and 8, has been causing a slow build-up of tension between Lloyd and his father. Something is eventually going to give and one of them is going to explode on the other, and that happens when they find out about Cole's fall. In typical Garmadon fashion, Garmadon just outwardly says that he doesn't care that Lloyd's friend has just died, and he basically just tells Lloyd to shut up, stop his whining, and keep on with the mission, which leads to Lloyd giving Garmadon a massive reality check.
Cole was our friend. He was more than a friend, he was family. But you don't understand that, do you? What's the point? You're never gonna get it. Because you don't care about anyone but yourself.
Every moment you delay risks our survival.
There's more to life than surviving!
In my own personal opinion, this is one of the most important scenes in March of the Oni, second only to the scene that takes place right after it, where Garmadon asks Vinny what could be more important than survival, and is then greeted with a giant list of everything that makes living life worthwhile. The idea of survival versus living a worthwhile life is the emotional core of the final part of the Oni trilogy and ties not just season 10 but the entire trilogy together into a very neat and emotionally resonant bow, and would not have been able to come to this conclusion without the Cole falling story. Cole's fall from the bounty led to Lloyd blowing up on his father, Garmadon reconsidering who he is and ultimately saving everyone at the end of the season, and then, in the far future, into his arc in Crystallized. Whether you like the story or not, and either way I think is valid because there are a fair few reasons not to like it, saying that Cole's fall contributed absolutely nothing of worth to the story of March of the Oni is just inaccurate in my opinion. Those are just my thoughts though. Be sure to let me know what you think of this story arc in the comments down below. I'd love to hear what you all think. Thanks for watching, everyone. On the screen now there will be some end cards, so if you feel like maybe binging some more videos, here are some potential places to start.